Welcome, everybody, to the monthly Second Saturdays poetry reading. My name is Dan Kerr, and I have the privilege of being your moderator for this monthly poetry program hosted by Kathy Donnelly. We do start reasonably promptly at 11 a.m. The program includes an open read, so if you want to be on the read list, please put your name in chat, and we'll make sure everyone has a chance to read. Please keep your microphone off, although Judy has a poem about barking dogs and ringing telephones, which maybe she'll read today, who knows. So out of respect for the other poets, please keep your mic muted until you get to the time when you're asked to read. And we'll leave time at the end of the session for informal interaction between us as well. Feedback is a gift. We do believe that. So if you like what we did, or you think we could do something better, or we screwed up in some way, just send me an email. That's a very simple email, danielbkerr@verizon.net, and we'd be happy to reflect on your feedback. Kathy and I have been doing this now. Kathy, I think it's coming up on almost 4 years now. We've been doing this, and we have a formula, but we're always looking to improve. So we always look for your feedback. So don't be bashful with your feedback. I'll get you settled and started. I'll turn it over to Kathy, and then we'll have Anita as our featured poet, and then we'll have the open read. We'll bring Nina back for an encore. And then I made a mistake. I do make errors. The concluding remarks are not from Nina. They're actually from Kathy Donnelly. So I do make mistakes, and this is one. Sorry about that. You're not here. You're here for poetry. You're not here for evangelization, but there are a couple of things we do at the church that the poets do participate in and do take advantage of. So we have a monthly concert series, and generally we feature students from the university. These happen to be 2 PhD graduates from the student, Stephen Gorgon String Duo, and they'll be here on June 1st. We do the poetry on a monthly basis. We also do Native American drumming as well. That's the fourth Thursday of each month. If you're interested in learning more about our monthly outreach events, just go to our website or just follow up with me personally, and I'll be happy to give you more background on that. Two things I'll mention that very actively involve the poets, although the poets do come to the concerts. Once a year, we combine poetry, music, and Native American drumming, and we do a very special concert/poetry reading called Conversations on the Sacred. This one is on Saturday, July 6th, and that's at 6 p.m. And what we do here, this was something conceived by a well-known poet in the area, Carmen Bugan. We take spiritual readings, sacred readings, and then each sacred reading is followed by an interlude. And that interlude could be musicians from Stony Brook University. It could be Dan Kinney playing the 200-year-old urban organ at All Souls, or it could be the gentleman there in the back row with the headband on. That's our Native American drummer, Indian drummer, and he part of the musical interlude is from him as well. So please consider joining us on July 6th. All the readings are done by poets, and it's all filled right now. So we've got as many poets as we have openings, but do encourage you to attend. And if one of the other poets drops out, I'll make sure to reach out to you. Also, once a year, you saw the picture of the beautiful church on the National Registry of Historic Places. But when we used to do the readings in the church, Gladys Henderson was the poet laureate. Gladys Henderson had to stop coming to host it because she couldn't make it up the stairs. So once a year, we do a special 5K race, 2K walk, and this celebrates the various things we do in the community. And it also raises funds to make the church accessible and to put a bathroom in the back of the church as well. We're going into our 16th year, and each year at that race and walk, we have a group called the Live Poet Society, and they walk each year as a group. You'll recognize all the poets there, and please consider joining them and walking with the poets on October 6th. So on behalf of the All Souls congregation, it's a privilege to welcome you here all today, and I will turn it over to Kathy. Kathy.
Okay, welcome everyone. It's nice to see a nice group. And I'm going to start with a poem by someone else. And today I've chosen a poem that's a love poem, Traces of You. And it's by Barbara Southard. I think many of us know her and love her. Yesterday, another storm leaving water-worn bricks scattered on the beach, their weight, texture, color, mystifying me just as you mystify me. I want to know where they came from, how they traveled, carrying all that density with them. I watch you walk into ocean waves, solid as a stone statue, feel planted on moving sands beneath you. This must be how bricks tumble into the sound, burrow in sand under currents, push them along the seafloor, casting them onto the shore in a wailing fury of frothed up wave. How restless they can be when not mortared down. Sounds like she's talking about us as well. Now I introduce a wonderful poet and a friend named Nina Yavel. Her poetry has appeared in several collected works beyond words, Bitter Root, an international publication, the Nassau County Poet Laureate Competition, Paumanok Transition, and the Walt Whitman Center, and has won prizes for poetry competitions sponsored by Barnes & Noble, the Owl in the Garden City, the Park Slope Press, and the Max Street Journal. Her short story, Pinnacle Game, and poem Eve were included in Risk, Courage, and Women, a prize-winning anthology which featured Maya Angelou, wow, and other women writers. University of North Texas University Press, 2007, published by Karen Waldron. She has featured at Poetry Street, On the Road in 2021, and 2023 is included in episode 3 of their videos. Nina also helped found the Poets of Well-Being, 3 women poets and therapists who ran writing workshops at recovery centers throughout Long Island. Nina is a doctor of clinical psychology and resides in Greenport, New York, with her sweet, loving boys, Chance and Finn. I am very, that's fabulous, Nina. Really a wonderful history of your work. I am very proud to present to you now Nina Yavel.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering who that was that you were
Oh, yeah.
describing.
Yes, somebody else, I'm
I'm
sure.
so like separate from it. Thank you, Kathy. And thank you so much, Dan, for inviting me here. You know, it's a wonderful venue. And I guess the voices of all the poets that have been here are still reverberating. I hope I can add something to that. I'm sorry my voice is a little froggy today. I've been not great, not in the best health, but doing better. Let's put it that way. So I'm kind of a lyrical poet, and when I started writing poetry, there was no such thing as rap or poetry slams or any of that. I think I was brought up on Edna St. Vincent Millay and people like that, and so most of my poetry is kind of lyrical. And I write about everything because everything interests me. The seasons, love, death, you know, taxes, whatever. It's all here. You know, I once said to a friend, if I was in a room with just dust, I think I would write poems about it. I'm not sure. Okay, so I'd like to start with a poem that always gets me moving. It's called Former Self. I will travel as a hexagon across the universal plane, feel the solar wind fall through stars, expand from 6 to 1, then 6 again. Then I will know what bees have known since their first primordial dancing, the elegant compulsion of the snow, translucent lines of crystal joining. And if somehow a foreign god or sun dissolves my perfect traveling chair, I'll gallop through it all again, first as a circle, then a square. And now some poems about the seasons. April again. It always comes back to April. Cherry blossoms unfold here and there, drift through cerulean skies. Cygnets come of age, follow close, sail the lake. Lovers sift through petals with names upon their lips. Caught in detail, I slip out of spring. Certain faces fill my memory. No time for blossoms, The birds seemed too loud. No time for hot bursts of magnolia, the dogwood crosses. Love took another path, uncoiled through withering daffodils, inside the decay of iris and lilac, to that infinite space where you and I pose separately, flower in April's long memory. The next poem, I have to explain that Brighton, I referred to Brighton, it's not England, it's Brighton Beach. But there is another reference to the hills above Uffington, which is in Brighton, England. It's called the White Horse. In September, when hurricanes blew the sea white, my brother and I walked along the beach in Brighton. When the barnacled rocks of the breakwater emerged black and polished from the foam, and gulls had settled in the gliding calm, we crawled upon our hands and knees and carved into the water-thickened sand bodies of giants. Centuries before us, an ancient race heard the same call, carved into the chalk cliffs, a sign for those to come. Haven't you seen the white horse on the mountain graze eternally on the thin grass, and felt with your own hands the slender bodies of the gods? Mid-January is a time of year when you can look back and see the past. October is still there, and looking forward to spring and eventually to summer. It all kind of happens at this point in time, or did for me. Mid-January. In mid-January, while the pumpkins dry, Indian corn in ruby and yellow light, gourds rest undisturbed, their puckered flesh sanded. In this mid-season of time before the brimming winter has arrived, October's sun still buttered rest like amber in the mind. The air clears, saunters through my window, scented green, lilacs from another spring, all the seasons round, while I continue on to dream of warmer suns and roses in this thistled vase, sipping honeyed tea, remembering. Excuse me. So I'm a therapist, and I write often about some of the people I've seen, some of the problems I've seen. And these next few poems are about mental illness, and one of its manifestations is mania. And we talk about the source of some of it and the experience of some of it, and eventually the recovery and maybe the celebration of after the recovery. Well, it starts with thin paper. Without love, there can be no chemistry. Without early love, there can be no later love, unless it is layered in thin sheets of paper over and over on the same wound, same pain, same broken will, until the wound begins to close and the pain slows, and the will returns to layer thin sheets of paper over and over to replace old film, to continuously mend the heart. Mother Moon. I tried to imagine this thin slice of Mother Moon, rounded. For one flowing moment, I felt the fullness of her belly. Then she slipped back to the sliver she was, and I waited patiently for the next phase. And this experience. Stained glass. The visions began slowly. That morning, she studied the marks of her fate, constellations on her arms, a six-pointed star on her face, By afternoon, she had slipped into a false harmony, lay stone-faced stretched in her lover's arms, her body chiseled marble, and she the Christ of the Pietà. On the ward, people strolled in their pajamas, stained glass characters from the tarot, the magician, the hangman, and she, the empress, clacking across the floor in wooden motion. They gave her pills of every color, and when she fought, wrapped her in canvas shirts and tightened the straps till her hands turned blue. After months, they said she was cleaned, appeared to be sound, yet she was restless. A medicated goddess, her earth streaked with color, shuffled through January streets in a bundle of down toward the stained glass shop. Straining like the clear voice of a distant piccolo, the morning came into focus. In silence, a blue boat with yellow sails skipped on a maroon sea. Rays of a Capricorn sun pierced white clouds. The Virgin pressed in thick glass, tears frozen in prayer. Now she stood at the door, heard the off-pitched toll of bells, and observed a broken spear at the window gate, studied a single bird circling, and whispered, "Will you teach me how to set these pieces into lead?" And afterwards, the ghost. I feel the ghost has left me. A flute plays against branches of thin birch in a corner of my now tidy mind. Water runs down smooth rocks to a peaceable sea. I can sit still for more than an hour. No pain more than I can bear, but I sleep with less abandon, tie my shoes carefully, walk pad-footed in this quiet room, like the cats in the winter streets. I have found this space now that the ghost has left me. And finally, a celebration of self. Eve. This carving of Eve emerged like David. He from an abandoned marble slab, and she from a twisted root that lay broken on the ground. With clear intent, I peeled the bark and found her shapely waist, the bulbs of knees, a single breast, an arm that spiraled, its hand a serpent's mouth. The other large and like a wing lay welded to her back. She was burdened by this weight. I whetted down the knife and shaped her gently so as not to break her crucial parts, and took her shoulders in my hands and scraped the dust. Until the devil's horned head peered up at me. The tie was strong. So I took Eve's long eccentric limbs and fashioned swans, cut elephants and apes into her graceful frame, and on her slender neck I placed a silver ring, one that I had never worn. I had bought it years ago, not knowing that it held Diana's handsome features with turtle doves entwined. Eve's stately form, unbalanced, could not stand. The tempter's weight was far too heavy on her wings, so I wound a wire above her ribs, where he and she were joined, and set her free. Now she sails above my bed at her own deliberate pace, a knowing smile on her face, the devil hoisted on her back. See what happened. And then a poem called Goldenrod, which is a poem about comforting. You look at the unsheathed earth, see dried stalks of corn, feel mud under your shoes, and curse. I see the goldenrod in 40 shades of gilded brown, soar with those gulls through skies of Bible light. But you're the one who comforts me, in the thick dark of night. And now maybe we can lighten it up. Those are kind of heavy. This poem is called Bookcase, and I read it in 1989. I wrote it a long time ago, and I think those of you who remember the 1970s and women striving for equality and coming to know themselves, etc. And so this is about a kind of frenetic housewife seeking that, called Bookcase. Believing it would bring success, she raised the I Ching to the top shelf and slipped the managerial woman underneath so they faced each other squarely. She rearranged the titles so that women in love pressed against our bodies, ourselves, and Zelda and the eternal man.
Nina, you accidentally turned
We
off your
lost
mic.
your.
Just a second, I'll handle it. Turn
I
your mic
got it.
back on. There you go. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay,
You accidentally turned off your mic.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. You're back on.
All right. So she rearranged the titles so that women in love pressed against our bodies, ourselves, and Zelda and the eternal man were back to back. We are not alone. On the second shelf now stood above Lady Chatterley's lover. Andre Gide sloped against the gypsies, and Yeats's vision firmly played in the FM band. Castaneda attained the same height as Delusions and Dreams, and two copies of Women in Madness were mirror images at the ends. And finally, with a full understanding of where each piece must fit, she slipped the Bible into the last niche between love and will and the unexpected universe. Thank you. So, going to drift into some more lighter love poems. Start with Mystic. At Mystic, the boats glide by. Sun folds their sails. October's rush of wind stirs the water, sets their wake. Warm autumn tones wash the busy streets. Strangers wind their way like sailors unsteady on the slate. Unspoken words like anchors lay beneath the rusted hulls, then surface fine and sweet like cormorants or swans pulling at the grasses in the bay. How cleverly we turned mast and jib sail, secured the other's side. The canvas seemed to brush your lips and place the barest kiss. Your smile turned bittersweet, your eyes a watercolor blue. It was a day for sails to slack and linger, breathe with the pull of tide. How did that mainsail set so swiftly, and so the polished wheel? And before I knew what hit me, I was out to sea again. So this next poem is kind of a childhood fantasy, I guess. I just kind of one day just wrote it, and it just, some of these poems just come through you. You don't even know where they came from. This one is called Yes, I Have Loved the Moon. Yes, I have loved the moon, sister of night, who drifts like a child lost without light. When the moon and I were young, we rode above the mountains, slipped by the jaws of cloud wolves into the lace of angels. We sailed black lakes below the streaming stars and galloped like two cowboys across the summer sky. We cruised through clouds of delight, dancers who thrashed about, hair on fire, fingers stretched and twisting. Beneath the firmament they sighed, gambled with the winds and held the gold brace of sun to their thighs. The moon and I waited in her temple of hammered silver, our breath coming hard like a wind in a wind tunnel, eyes glazed with pleasure, like sailors remembering the land through sea swells. At dawn, they came to us, rocked us in their arms, and spilled us into a sapphire sky, content as lambs. I will always dream of their rich perfumes, full breasts round against my forehead. It is the moon I love, now framed between the bamboo and the sash. She will always be a woman in her time. This next poem was in the harmonic transition, which Kathy edited and chose. Thank you. Winter Song. I search for you through stained windows, waiting for older voices to bring a song. Soon, so soon there will be green, and white robes shiver, caress thin sparrows, their nerves reach into the core, frozen branches ache toward morning. Spines straight, they dance a stark ballet. When the song rises, soon, so soon there will be green, and rivers will flow through the heartwood. Lost love will return in fine voice. And now a poem to a real person called Quantum Leap. The woman I loved drew trees, drew their limbs, sketched their thighs, their breasts, circled their bodies, drew them in her silence with the kiss of her pen, graceful, gentle, traced the muscles, their long necks. The woman I loved drew trees, drew me into life, circled my heart with her hands, loved me into the light. She drew me in her silence. In her laughter, she created me. Her hands traced my body, my limbs, my thighs, circled my breasts. The woman I loved drew trees, drew the hollow buds, the stems of awakening. The bicycle path. Along the bicycle path, time's light flickers. Trees peel their pastels to fuller shades and finally to brown. Nearby, the sea flutters with imaginary fish, slips beneath quickening mallards, stirs the meringue shore. I pedal in and out of seasons, tracing footfalls below a teal sky that speaks of summer's morning or winter's afternoon. Here the clouds hold the sun, a marble, in their billowy cheeks, and thickets hold their berries from late August through to June. In time, gulls that tossed black shells to the stone-cluttered beach will drift like decoys on the swelling sea. Marsh grasses that whistled like children will pull at the wind with silvery teeth, shift from silver to a drier gold, and we will walk the bicycle path, growing young, growing old. Don't I have time for one or two more, Dan?
Yes, two more will be fine.
Okay. Neighborhoods. The sea is alive under moon, fish lights spawning, slate blue neighborhoods born in angles of light. Sea shanties rise and sway in the billows, carvings of seals lift up from the white caps, blow out sea foam and arch into the thick. I long to walk these gray plains, wander aimlessly, encounter unknown species who speak with sea lips, lost sailors, barbarians, wolves, fishwives who lost their way when their railings failed. But I scamper, soft-shelled, burrow in known harbors, move quiet, warm through long reeds, listen to the wavering of a deeper sea. one more love poem. This one I'm going to read in a slightly dramatic voice. Sort of fun. Called an affaire de cœur, which in French means an affair of the heart. What dark perverseness has me drawn from this licentious bed at dawn? I dare not speak. What makes forbidden this embrace marks so tangential a disgrace, though not unique? My lover's languid azure eyes, that Marquis de Sade disguise that he wears, his silken breeches black as ash, the gossamer mustache elicit tears. It's clear I share this boy's guilt, or as he surveys my quilt with his guile, or extends his limbs in space so they just barely etch my face, I'm forced to smile. I admit that I am taken at the moment I rifle. My body is his cello as he plays this tender fellow, surely schemes. He so combs me.
Nina, you turned your mic off again by mistake. Right after you had played it like a cello.
He so combs me with his aura, like some petulant angora that I sneeze. His tumid lips against me press as he digs into my breast, the cunning beast. I am his slave, he knows it well, and as his chest begins to swell, I serve the feast. Is this perverse? So I'm told, but I'll persist until I'm old with Rudy, gentle Rudy, my Siamese. I'll leave it that way. Thank you so much.
Well done, and we look forward to the encore. You know, you said at the outset that you wrote about everything, and you reflect on just the poems that you read. You know, the poem about your former self, and the poems about weather, and April and mid-January, and the sharing some of the insights from your work as a therapist. Just beautiful, moving poetry all the way around, and the bookcase poem. You know, that bookcase poem reminded me of one of my favorite scenes from the great movie about the Scopes Monkey trial, Inherit the Wind, in the last scene where the guy who played Clarence Darrow picks up the Bible and he picks up the origin of the species. He holds them in each hand and he puts them together and then walks out with a smile. Very similar to your bookcase poem, and just beautiful, beautiful. The bicycle path and the neighborhoods, and what a wonderful way to end with that. Saucy poem on the affair of the heart. Just well done. So thank you. That was a real gift you've given all of us. So okay, we're going to switch over now to the open read, and we have some new folks with us. So I'll just I don't want to call them rules. I'll just call them guidelines. So if you want to read a poem, with the exception of Marvin, please write your name in chat. And if you are chat challenged, then what we'll do at the end is Kathy and I will go around and we'll ask anyone who hasn't read yet, give them an opportunity to read. Please, only one poem and no more than 5 minutes. If you get to 5 minutes, I'm going to have to say, that's all, folks. I'll impersonate Bugs Bunny. So again, pick one poem, less than 5 minutes. Keep your microphone muted, and please wait to be called upon to read. And we'll bring Kathy back to close the program after we have our encore with Nina. So the first group of three that we're going to have is Marvin, followed by Maggie, followed by Herb. So Marvin, over to you.
I wrote this poem for my wife for Mother's Day. It's called O-O-H. The opening word is soul, S-O-U-L. Oh, soul beat, crescendo embracing, soothing him, soothing me, honey cadence, lift me, oh, to tunes of pipes, through sun's deliciousness, beyond sky, through ocean swelling with swell of you, beyond grass breathing with breath of you, lift me, oh, into the heart of you, to die, live again in your everything.
Are we okay, Dan?
Dan, you're muted.
Can't hear you.
That was a
Maggie, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Kathy. Nina, that was absolutely gorgeous. I loved every poem. Some of them I've heard before, and some of the ones I haven't heard just so resonated. Oh my goodness. Anyway, this is a mother's poem. It's called My Mother's Vanity. I entered your room, though I was forbidden, opened the magical drawer to solve the mystery. Though I was forbidden, my eyes widened at the sight. I longed to solve the mystery, be privy to the secret. My eyes widened at the sight. Lipsticks, rouge, polishes, pencils of kohl, privy to the secret, I swooned to mingling aromas. Lipsticks, rouges, polishes, pencils of kohl, all powdered with rosy dust. I swooned to mingling aromas, fragrance of you. Powdered with rosy dust, I clumsily put on rouge, lipstick, fragrance of you. This is the me I will become. I clumsily put on rouge, lipstick, tissued telltale fingers. This is the me I will become, the me of you. Tissued telltale fingers open the magical drawer. The me of you entered your room.
Thank you, Maggie. Well done. Okay, Herb, over to you.
Okay. On May 4, 1975, I moved to East Hollywood, California. And then later that month of May, I was missing a really dear friend and then wrote this lyrical poem. Teresa Ann. Even asleep, I sigh and weep. You're constantly here haunting me. I was up past 2, drinking toasts to you, till each trace of your face was blurred, unheard, in the dark of my heart. Long Island days lie far away. You were my friend. I hear again songs radios played for a masquerade, songs that crazed, songs that chased and led me dead to the dark of my heart. My lovely Anne, my love began far too ill-starred. I fell too hard. How did our lives get cast into a crazy mask? Confused, I watched while you danced by with sparkling smiles in your dark eyes. Your heart glowed brightly like May skies. Each day for you, my memories cry. For you, my lovely Anne. LA spring nights are cold. Each bites and eats my brain. Not much remains. My cold rooms are empty. Strangers here can't help me. They all case my blank face and find I've climbed into the dark of my heart. My lovely Anne, my love began, far too ill-starred. I fell too hard. How did our lives get cast into a crazy mask? Confused, I watched while you danced by, with sparkling smiles in your dark eyes. Your heart glowed brightly like May skies. Each day for you, my memories cry. For you, my lovely Anne. Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. Well done. Okay, the next group of 3 is Megan, followed by James, and then followed by JR. So Megan, over to you.
Thank you. This is called Evergreen. You tower over me. I trail questions along your scaly bark, yearn to translate your network of vibrant underground language, transmitted through your root tips and fungal friends. When wind whisks seeds from your cones and new trees' roots, will you nurture your saplings, send them energy until they grow tall enough to meet light? When a storm visits, will you become paper, feel fingers murmur over your veneer of braille dots, catch stories tapped out onto your whitewashed surface, transport words that will change lives? Will you become the hollow body of a guitar, play a song that will unravel a heart, braid it together? Will you become a piece of a home, shelter lives and generations of dreams? Or will you continue to thrive right where you stand, renewing us with oxygen sustaining life, pulling rainwater up through roots, releasing moisture back into the world through needles like gentle tears of gratitude? We take in each other's exhalations, use what the other cannot. I inhale your woody, fruity reassurance. I may never understand your words, but breathing together in your shade is enough. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan. Well done. Makes me feel guilty about that tree I just cut down. Okay. James, I'll give you a chance to turn your mic on. And if it doesn't go on, James has sent in his poem and I will read it for him. So James going once, going twice. Okay, so I'm going to read on James's behalf. Always glad to have the great state of North Carolina represented in this poetry. Here goes, poem from James. Much money would spend, receive bills, which they will send, on income depend. About game we'll talk, would be hit or was a walk, or had been a balk. Would be well rehearsed, best and never worst, in standing was first. When we heard God call, many sins caused us to fall. Each one will appall. When my sins still hurt, God does serve meals with dessert, gave me a growth spirit. We started to grieve from all the sins did receive. In God we believe. Thank you, James. Okay. And now over to JR.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina. Oh my gosh, they were just, it was wonderful. It's wonderful to hear poems that will be in your forthcoming book. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Kathy. Crazy busy day. I have to kind of zoom out of here and zoom into George Wallace's Building Bridges because I'm one of the hosts next month. So I have to at least wave and say hi for 5 minutes. And then I have the extreme pleasure of hosting John Amen of Pedestal Magazine and Tony Policano at East Meadow Library. So I have my rollerblades on and I am blasting. And then more for today. Today is my husband and my 39th wedding anniversary. So, and we're both working all day. So it's a day. So this is for Paul, and it's in my B is for Betwixt and Between. But I'm also thanking Kathy Donnelly because it's in the original Palmanac book. Before this day, for Paul, before we met, dated, married, before we tripped through lonely days, before adulthood, puberty, childhood, long before we were born, before our parents dreamt our names, before they met, married, before they met, dated, married, long before they were born, before their parents, their parents, their parents conceived, before their ancestors emigrated to America, to New York, to forge a path to lead us here today. Before man, before woman, before there was language, before dinosaurs dominated our land, before grass, before trees, before planets orbited in the firmament, before day, before night, before there was light, We were destined to be one. Thank you.
Thank you, JR.
Now I
Okay,
know why I published that, Judy. That was fabulous.
Thank you.
okay. The next group of three are Virginia, followed by Dan, followed by Shu.
I think you can hear me now, right?
Yes, you
Yes.
come loud and clear.
I made the mistake of sending this poem to a person related to someone in the poem, long story. And she called me up and said, I'm still looking for the rhyme. So anyway, so this is one of those rhymeless poems. And I call it a poem. Cousins ticking away. My cousin Joe died before COVID struck. He was my mother's sister's son. Glad we took him to dinner the year before. He was frail from a rheumatic heart, but still I was shocked. We had played together in grandfather's house in the 1950s. He would gift us with nylons at Christmas, I and my four sisters. My father acted as Joe's father after Joe's own father's death. Then my husband's cousin Bill, a tennis and golf player, slim and impulsive, died in front of his family of a stroke. His wife and I corresponded, and she sent pictures of times when they boated to our island. I was startled by our youth. Bill was the youngest son of my husband's mother's brother, whose own father left them and their mother and disappeared only to return for a brief hello. Barbara, Joe's sister, called me a few times a year. The last I later learned a few days before her fall, which at her age of 88 cracked her hip. I was a bridesmaid at her wedding, an April day when it snowed. We always could talk, and I can hear her soft laugh now. I am glad Alex and I visited her in New Jersey a few years back. We spent the day with her and John, who still survives her inevitable death. Barbara spent time in a rehabilitation facility, and that was where her weakened heart failed. I wrote her son, my godchild, my memories of her, some consolation, I hope, for him. My last conversation with Barbara was about my successful search for the family of my great aunt Araxi. I have found her son George, a Yale professor of neuropsychology, and her deceased daughter's family, confirmed by ancestry, I told Barbara. I hope to meet the found cousin a future day. Araxi's sister Zarawi also had children. One Bob, 20 years my senior, I knew from trips to Cleveland. His death ended my visits. Her other son's children still correspond, and from one I learned George used to borrow tools from my father and that the professor was failing. Another email, George had died, right after our ancestry nod. I spoke to a son of George's sister and learned more about his uncle. My husband and I called his cousin Jim a few times a year during COVID. We visited Jim and Jane the summer before COVID, a most enjoyable visit. When we called this past spring, we were invited to Jim's 98th birthday in June. Their son Dave, the conductor, often at the Met, where we saw him conduct twice, called us in May to give us the sad news. I liked Jim. He was intense, energetic, and knew how to make an honest buck. I helped my husband write up his memories of Jim for family, most rambling praise for a cousin 11 years older, expert with cars and business schemes. We went to the funeral home as we had done with my cousin Joe, and as with Joe, I was astonished at the children and grandchildren unknown. What is known? We have lost lives intricate to our own. We have lost connections of youth. We have lost years off our lives.
Thank you, Virginia. Very moving. Okay, so the next reader is Dan Kerr, and I've got to bring along a prop here. So 30 years ago, my wife and I, Susan, actually on May 6th was our 30th year anniversary.
Oh, nice.
And my wife, Susan, had the good fortune. That was the year that she became a New York Ranger hockey fan. And I don't know how many of you know the tortured history of the New York Rangers, but this is a poem I wrote called 1940 Nevermore. And the title will hopefully become clearer when I read the poem. 1940, nevermore. There are times when a sporting event is more than a game. The fight between Max Schmeling and Joe Louis at the end of World War II. Muhammad Ali knocking out Sonny Liston and declaring, "I am the greatest of all time." Willis Reed limping onto the floor of the old Madison Square Garden and inspiring the Knicks to beat the Lakers in Game 7 and their first NBA title. Jim Valvano and the boys from North Carolina State defeating the heavily favored Houston Cougars in the 1983 NCAA. Bobby Thompson shot heard around the world that beat the Dodgers in a playoff as the radio announcer shouted repeatedly, "The Giants win the pennant, the Giants win the pennant." Bill Mazeroski's home run in the bottom of the ninth that toppled the mighty New York Yankees in the 1960s World Series. Johnny Unitas and the Baltimore Colts defeating the New York Football Giants in overtime at Yankee Stadium in the greatest football game ever played. And Joe Namath and the upstart New York Jets shocking the world by defeating the heavily favored Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. Herb Brooks and his group of college kids performing the Miracle on Ice and vanquishing the mighty Soviet Union at the 1980 Olympics in Lake Placid. All of these are events that transcended mere sport and captured the hearts and minds of a nation. But for me and lifelong suffering New York Ranger fans, ice hockey fans, nothing was ever felt more deeply than the Rangers winning the Stanley Cup in 1994. Uncle Fred took me to my first Ranger game at the old Madison Square Garden in 1962. The Rangers were awful, and Gump Worsley played goalie without a mask. Like many former New York Rangers, after he was traded to the Montreal Canadiens, Gump Worsley won 4 Stanley Cups for another team. Freddie became a Ranger fan in 1941, the year after the Rangers won their last Stanley Cup. Throughout his lifetime, the Rangers were either awful or just not good enough to win it all. Whenever they got close to a championship, a Ranger shot hit the post. A Ranger star broke an ankle. An opposing team shot from the point. It went in. The puck took a bad bounce, or some other sad twist of fate killed the dream of another Stanley Cup. It was often said the hockey gods put a curse on them when they burned the mortgage on the old Madison Square Garden after the Stanley Cup in 1940. Whenever the Rangers were playing on the road and clearly on their way to defeat, the home crowd would chant the dreaded curse that all Ranger fans felt deeply in their heart and soul. 1940, 1940, 1940. Uncle Fred died in 1993, the year before the Rangers put it all together, and Mark Messier hosted the Stanley Cup at the Garden that wondrous day in June of 1994. 54 years of futility were over, and the announcer shouted, "This one will last a lifetime." At the ticker tape parade for the Rangers in Manhattan, several older fans held up signs that said, "Now I can die in peace." After attending the parade in Manhattan, I purchased the Stanley Cup banner and planted it atop Uncle Freddie's grave and sent pictures to all my brothers, my older brothers, that Uncle Fred took to Ranger games before me. When the Ranger players received their championship rings, there was an inscription inside each one, 1940, with a cross through it. The Rangers have come close a few times since 1994, and their seasons since then have often ended with playoff losses in games they should have won. But Uncle Fred can rest in peace, and I never have to endure that dreaded chant, 1940, nevermore. Thank you. Okay, Sue, over to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Nice morning to enjoy. So this poem is about depression. It's titled, "I Want to Cry." I want to cry. The day is perfect, yet the sun is too bright for the mind. The breeze is too chilly for the heart. I want to cry, cry for the unknown reason. The night is tranquil. except the moon is lonely for the soul. The star is far to reach. I want to cry, cry for the unbearable sadness. The view is flawless, yet the red is too overwhelming to touch, the green is too dull to have. I want to cry, cry for the painless pain. The music is harmony, yet the high pitch is too sharp to grasp, the low tone is too heavy to bear. I want to cry, cry for the endless sorrows. I want to cry, cry for yesterday's long gone, cry for today's emptiness, cry for tomorrow's uncertainties. I want to cry, yet no tears fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Shu. Well done. Okay, so let's just do a quick little look at the gallery here. So everyone who put their name in chat and Marvin has had a chance to read. And I know Kathy generally likes to read. So before we ask Kathy to read, is there anyone else who would like to read? Just wave your hand. Okay, all right. Kathy, over to you then.
So we have two people on phone, Regina and Jackson. They don't want to read.
They could, if Regina or Jackson, if you want to read, just turn on your mic and let us know. Why don't you go ahead, Kathy, and then if they want to add, they can add themselves.
Okay. Nina, that was just brilliant, just lovely. I don't know who of you know about this place out in Brookhaven. It's like an old house from the 1800s, and it's about teaching children things in the woods. It's a very wooded area. It's called Center for Early Education and Development, SEED, SEED. There's a farm next door, and it's actually owned by Rosalina, Isabella Rosalina. Is that her name? Isabella. Do I have that right?
I believe
Anyway.
so.
Yeah. So anyway,
Rossellini. Isabella Rossellini.
Thank you. Okay, so once a year they have a poetry reading, but it's a phrastic poetry. So I'm going to read the poem that I was asked to write. And here is the picture that I was given. It's a people do artwork, and there's a walk through the woods, 20 different exhibitions, and this was mine. So can you see that? Anybody? Can you see what I showed you or no?
It's kind of gray. I don't know if there's an image.
Basically, it's flowers made out of wrought iron because, again, people are working with wrought iron or actually many different things, wood. And so it's a flower. So I wrote a poem to that, and that's what we call, it's by Pam Brown, Ephrastic. It's in the infinite realm of design, that which brings us to awe each time we open our eyes. Take a breath, clear the mind of all else. Just be in the moment like a reprieve from the everything. Let the vision be the all, the colors, patterns, contours, its flow, reach, natural place. To live, thrive, grow, flourish, is to bring us to a certain knowing. What perfection is given to us, gifts like the body. Our imaginations want to reproduce it in our own voice, within our own skill, bring the natural to works of art. Another form of perfection from the same mind that sees and needs to take the transient to the permanent, to share with everyone without access. Are we designed to appreciate beauty? It's all around us, impossible to ignore. Flowers would grow even if not intended, attended, despite us all, soil and rain, sun, shade, finding a place in the world to be their natural selves, allowing us to enjoy, maybe, hopefully, not picking for short-term adornment. How does it feel to be picked? What do flowers sense? Do they warn others to find homes amongst the rocks, under tree branches, or old brown leaves left over the seasons? Do they let the weeds deter us, I'm sorry. Their inferior selves, let them take the hit. No matter. They too have their own perfection. So my response to wrought iron flower.
Thank you, Kathy. Well done. Okay, so Nina, we'll bring you back for an encore.
Okay, a wonderful afternoon. Really enjoyed everybody's poems. I'd like to finish my poetry with a prayer, but this is an unusual prayer. You know, the cosmologists are telling us that that there really is nothing here, that it was all created by a program somewhere in another star system by a 7-year-old, something called a simulation. So this is called a prayer to a higher power. Our program creator, who art in the Pleiades, great simulator of mankind, expansive be thy name. Thy branches will come, thy strings be done, on earth as it is in your celestial office. Compound each day our daily code, and forgive us our glitches as we forgive those who thrash about us. Lead us not into the void, and deliver us from the unskilled who might erase us. For thine is the source, the power, and the light through infinite probability. Amen.
That's great, Nina. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. Wow. We need to change all our prayer books now.
Wonderful, Nina.
Call it Our Mother.
Kathy, over to you.
So next month we have Rosie Weisner. Rosie is a marvelous poet. She's witty and clever, and she's one of our neighbors here in Stony Brook area. So we look forward to Rosie Weisner, and it's, you know, it's spelt with an I, but it's Wiesner. And yeah, we will see you all next month and hopefully hear the wonderful poetry of this woman.